and this is Male Entrepreneur Podcast episode number 174, and we are live in 3, 2. All right, welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, the male entrepreneur himself, Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
Hey, what's up, Nathan? I'm doing pretty awesome, man. I'm loving this new setup you have here as you see us live. If you can see us live on YouTube, Nathan's done an awesome job in creating these frames and how it looks. For those of you listening to the podcast, too bad, but check out YouTube. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and check us out.
And if you go on YouTube, you can find us at youtubeformen.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and just jump into this week's episode. We're kind of revisiting something that you've talked about in the past. I regrettably am completely ignorant of the subject, but I know it's something that you're passionate about. So I'm excited to hear you talk about it. What do we got lined up for the podcast this week?
Yeah, we were originally supposed to do this podcast with another gentleman, but I guess he was a little bit busy. We didn't hear back from him because he was interested in this topic as well. But in a few episodes ago, well, it's probably been a few months, we talked about the Dawn Wall. We talked about the movie. We talked about the principles and the morals within that movie. And it is one of my favorite documentaries of all time. It's my favorite because this guy, and hopefully if you're listening, obviously, and you listened to the past episode, you got a chance to watch this. This guy pretty much does, and it's considered impossible by so many of the best rock climbers out there. This guy climbed this sheer, basically straight, I don't even know how to describe it. This wall, basically that's what it is, this rock wall. And it took him a couple of weeks or a few weeks to do it, but it was all the best rock climbers in the world thought he could never do it, but this guy actually did it. And he did it with a partner, which is the even better part.
So when you told me how excited you were about this movie, I was like, what does rock climbing have to do with business or male development? Not male development. That came out wrong. What does rock climbing have to do with what it is that we're constantly talking about on this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. And rock climbing, it's the end goal. It's what this guy had to do to get there. So let's talk about his story. If you've seen it, the story is this kid had some learning disabilities when he was younger, and he grew up, I believe, in the 80s. It looks like he's probably around my age, and his father was kind of like this outdoors tough dude, almost kind of like a bodybuilder as well. Took him out because his father was a rock climber, took him out rock climbing. It was incredible what he got this young kid to do at a young age. At 6 years old, I was just showing in the documentary, I showed some of the pictures. This kid was literally climbing rocks and going basically, I wouldn't say ziplining, but that's what I'm going to call it. Ziplining from one peak to another peak at 6 years old. That is something I would not do right now as a grown adult. And eventually what ended up happening was this kid became considered one of the best rock climbers in the world, and his journey to get there. So that's what this movie is about. And there's so many lessons in this movie. First of all, how he actually started. So his father said, I'm not going to let my son, who has this disability of learning in typical school, down in life. So he got his son doing other things. Now, his father was a little bit tough on him as well, but his father got him into a sport that he became the best at in the world. So I think the first lesson for me is I've seen this with some fathers. Some fathers will baby their kids who have a known disability, for example, or a challenge in life, and coddle them. But I love what this father did. He took that challenge and turned it into a strength in some other area. And I think that's important for us to do as fathers in the first place. So that's lesson number one, Nathan.
I think Napoleon Hill, I want to say it was either in Think and Grow Rich or Outwitting the Devil. He has a story about how his son was hard of hearing. I think he was even deaf, and his mom coddled him and always was like, oh, you can't do this because the world won't accept you for this and blah, 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 blah. But he always kept telling his son, you can do anything. And what people see as a disadvantage, you can actually use to your advantage. And his son ended up taking on that mindset and going amazing places in life. But uh, it's one of those things where you can see, depending on the two different ways of parenting. And I think that a lot of times nowadays, people wear their learning disabilities or their personality disorders as a badge of honor. And that's kind of a scary thing to me, that so many people nowadays, it becomes who they are rather than just one aspect of something that they have to overcome.
Yeah, I think people have just gotten too comfortable and honestly a little bit too wussy when it comes to, there's two things that stand out for me: resistance, and sorry, I should say resilience and determination. Those are two, I think, long lost arts that I'm seeing in future generations, because they're just not being resilient enough or determined enough to get to where they want to be. And it's our job as fathers to teach that, instill that into our children. I think it's very, very important. There's a gentleman that I work with, and his son is per I don't even like to say it, diagnosed, possibly autistic. That's what I like to say, because people are quick to judge people these days, even professionals. But I was saying to him, I said, "Hey, look, some of the most brilliant people have this autism challenge, right? They have allowed us, or they have become the best inventors in the world. Some of these people are so brilliant that, this could be a strength for him. So don't play on this. Don't play on this as a weakness. Play on this as a strength, because with every challenge, there is some strength that can come as a result of that."
So in this movie, how did his father, were there any examples or anything that comes to your mind about how his father was able to instill that type of mindset in his kid as he was growing up?
Yeah, he just took him rock climbing and threw him on cliffs. I was like, I would never do that to my kid, but he did it. And this kid at 6 years old, I'm not exaggerating, he was at 6 years old, he was climbing stuff that I would never, ever go near. No way. I have no desire to do that. I'm probably not even the guts to do that, because he just, it was just incredible. So he just took him with him. He took him along his journey. And I think that is so powerful, because his son saw his dad in action, right? It wasn't just words. His dad was there climbing with him, right? Being there every step of the way. That was the important thing. There's one particular thing that changed this kid's trajectory in life when he was a teenager, and that was when they were driving by or going to some kind of rock climbing competition. It was an artificially created wall, and they had some of the best rock climbers there in the US doing this competition. And somehow I think they opened it up to one or two contestants, if I'm not wrong, in the public. And this kid entered it. And guess what? He won. He was the only climber as a teenager that finished the climb, whereas all these other professional rock climbers couldn't even complete the climb. That's what changed his trajectory in life. That's what gave him the confidence to say, wow, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be the best. And after that, it was just like gung ho. And it was really interesting, because there's the point too in this is one single moment in life can change the entire outcome of your future. So never give up an opportunity that comes your way.
I think what's crazy about that is, just when it comes especially to mindset issues, a lot of times we identify by certain things that have happened in the past to us. So we asked a girl out on a date and she laughed at us, and therefore from that point forward, girls don't like us and we don't ask girls out. Or we tried to get our parents' attention and they had a headache, and so they said, you know what, I just don't have time for this. And from that point forward, oh, me doing this thing isn't interesting or worthy of attention from people. But then one little thing like that, where you say, okay, you know what, that might have been what it was in the past, but I'm going to try again today. And you come up with a new outcome. And then all of a sudden, if you take it the right way, you can have a new identity. Now You're no longer the guy who gets laughed at when he asks the girl out. You're the guy who gets a prom date when he asks the girl out. And just picking and choosing which of these events you're going to allow to or to I guess, yeah, be your identity. Picking and choosing, we all have a wide variety of these different events in our life that we can use to say this is who I am. But some of us pick oh, I'm the guy with the learning disabilities who has to be coddled and can't accomplish because I'm not as smart as other people, versus I'm the guy that when I was 16 years old was the only person able to scale this wall. We all in our lives, we all have examples of both extremes, but depending on which ones we pick to become our identity are the ones that we end up living through.
Very well put. I think the one thing there, as you were talking about that, Nathan, is if we take a look at that one instance in time, let's just say he didn't go into that competition. His skill level was still the same. He was still the same kid with the same skill level, but maybe he wouldn't have had that level of confidence. So that's really interesting when you think about it. Whether he did that competition or not, he was still the same person. But because he did that competition, his life, his path changed completely. So that makes us think honestly and openly, can we just change the trajectory of our lives by ourselves? Right? Can we do that without some kind of instance like this? And the answer is yes. It's all in how we perceive ourselves and our identity, which is important.
Absolutely. So we've talked about male development today. We've talked about wussies today. What were some of the other lessons that you took out of this movie?
Well, you know what? Here's the other thing, which is a good thing to a certain degree, but it can also be challenged. This guy was so consumed by this one thing in terms of climbing this one wall that it took up his entire life. He trained day in and day out for hours, full time, to climb that one wall. Like it became an obsession, which I would say can be dangerous for most men because an obsession can cause you to have challenges in other areas of life. Now he was lucky, his first relationship failed, but he was lucky in that his second relationship, his spouse was very supportive, right? And she was there. She wanted to see him get up this wall. And this wasn't like, hey, look, I'm going to train for a few months to get there. This was years of training to be able to go up there, years of dedication, years of literally, he was mapping out what the path is. Because Nathan, I never knew this, but these climbers, the stuff that they climb on, I was just like, I wouldn't even be able to put one foot on there because there's virtually almost nothing to grapple. There's virtually nothing to grasp with your fingers, but these guys are so trained with their nails in their hands that he's able to, just a single little crack, pull himself up, which the average person would never be able to do. So he mapped thousands of those little movements on this mountain for years. So his dedication ultimately paid off, which was fabulous.
I think nowadays a lot of us are too quick to give up on things. I know, especially with a lot of entrepreneurs, I see one week they're doing this and then the next week they're doing this. And before they have the chance to actually get great at anything, they're moving on to the next thing. And that was just kind of what came to mind when you were talking about that, is how important it is to actually see through the things that you start rather than chasing all of the new opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, and there's exactly staying dedicated, staying persistent, absolutely 110%. Now there's two other things that, you know what, I'm not gonna spoil everything, but there's one other event that has a major impact that probably would have crippled most of us. When this kid was younger, because of that competition, the word started to get out. He became more popular. They asked him to do I believe it was a Europe, not a European, Middle East climb or something with a couple of other people. What ended up happening was, as they were doing this, they got kidnapped by some extreme groups, which I'm not going to say please don't take this the wrong way if you're listening. It wasn't the Taliban, but it was a similar type of a faction, extremist groups that were, fighting the government, for example, kidnapped them for days, basically at gunpoint. And what ended up happening was the group split up, and there was one guy left with them. And this kid, to save his own life, guess what he had to do? He had to push this guy off a cliff.
Geez, this is a dark a dark story, Pradeep.
Yeah, and think about that. As a teenager, he had to throw this guy off a cliff and live with that. Now, you know what? Most people would say, yeah, you had to do that, but still, taking another person's life is not easy. And he felt it for years after that. But he also saved he saved his other climbing friends, for example. But that is just something that could have crippled or broken the average person. Yet again, he made it through that situation and just added a different layer of complexity to his life. And he said he was a completely different person as a result.
Okay, now you've convinced me. I'm definitely going to go check this movie out or this documentary out because I did not know that it was that deep. You brought up one more thing, and I want to touch on this before we're out of here. You said that it didn't work out between him and the first person that he was married to or in a relationship with, and then he ended up getting with somebody else who was willing to stick by his side while he followed this thing that he was obsessed with. How important is, I guess the question is, if you're a guy and your values are driving you one way and you're in a relationship with someone whose values drive them the opposite way or cause conflict, how do you decide whether this is somebody who I should work with and figure out if we can make this work, or I guess maybe how important is it to know when to say, hey, I need to find somebody who better aligns with my values?
Well, there's two things. Does that person bring out the best in you? Does that person bring out a desire for you to be better? Does that person enable you to grow? There's a difference between frustration and feeling crappy about yourself and frustration saying, okay, I can learn as a result of this and grow. That's ultimately it. Do you feel supported? Do you feel like there's some growth opportunity? Do you feel like you can actually do something better as a result of being with this person? That's ultimately it, right? Your gut will tell you, your heart will tell you that. That is important. The interesting thing with this movie and this story is that the first person that he was with was the girl that he went on the trip with. And so they became basically boyfriend and girlfriend after that instance of being kidnapped. And they were together. And that was his climbing buddy for years. She became his climbing buddy. And she was most likely going to be that person that climbed up that wall, that impossible wall with him. But they broke up. They eventually broke up. And he had to find a new partner who happened to be a guy, a climbing buddy, not a relationship, that went on this journey with him that had virtually, I would say, little experience in what he was going to do. So you have to see this for that reason. For reason number one, the importance of partnerships and being supportive and what you can actually achieve. And reason number two, because I'm not going to spoil this, but this is this one point. If you get this, if you watch this movie and you see this can change your life. I guarantee you. Something else happened to this gentleman that would have made 99.9% of most climbers stop physically being able to climb a wall. And this guy, it happened to him and he still did it, and he still did the impossible. So for that reason, watch that one instance of his life that something happened and he still pursued. So that is something I'm going to leave you with, because you definitely have to watch this movie.
Okay, you've done a fantastic job of convincing me and probably the audience as well. The movie is called The Dawn Wall, DAWN.
Yes, correct. The Dawn Wall. I think it still may be on Netflix, but definitely check it out. It is worth it.
Awesome. All right, man. And until next time, if people want to check out more episodes of this podcast, where's the best place for them to go?
Check out YouTubeformen.com and mailpodcast.com.
All right, man. Until next time, we'll catch you later.
Till next time.